Good evening, all, and thank you for tuning in to tonight's story. If you enjoy it, please remember to subscribe and like the video so we can continue bringing you more horror stories. Now, without further ado, take a deep breath and relax as we take a journey through the night. I ate a man last night. I can still feel him inside me, clinging to the lining of my stomach, his taste lingering on my tongue like a secret I can never confess. The salt of his sweat, the iron tang of his blood, the give of his muscles between my teeth. It was real. It was necessary. I woke up to the smell of copper on my breath, dried black stains under my fingernails, and a fullness I haven't felt in years. A fullness beyond hunger, something deeper, more complete. I didn't know his name. Does that make it easier, harder? He was just a man, one of many, someone with a heartbeat that slowed beneath my grip, a face contorted in the exquisite realization that he would never see the morning. I remember his eyes, wide, darting, looking past me at the walls of my apartment as if there might be a way out hidden in the peeling wallpaper. There wasn't. He made a sound when I sunk my teeth into his shoulder, something between a gasp and a sob, and I shuddered at the intimacy of it. He tried to fight. They always do. The frantic thrashing, the begging, the futile attempts at escape. These are the last acts of those who still believe the world is kind, that life has rules. I held him down, felt his pulse hammering against my tongue, his tendons straining as I peeled skin from muscle with practiced precision. It was beautiful. You think I'm a monster. That's fair. I would have thought the same once. But if you had known hunger like mine, the kind that gnaws at the marrow, that whispers in your ear at night, promising relief just beyond the next heartbeat, you wouldn't judge so quickly. I wasn't always this way. I used to eat like everyone else. I used to feel empty in the way that people understand. An empty stomach, an empty heart, an empty life. But this is different. This is not the hunger of the poor or the lonely. This is the hunger of the forsaken, the cursed, the enlightened. The first time was an accident. A bar fight turned messy, a bottle broken, a throat opened. I had never seen so much blood outside of a butcher shop. It pooled around my feet, still warm, steaming in the winter air. I pressed my hand to the wound, trying to stop the flow, but my fingers sank into the gaping flesh, and the scent was unbearable. My stomach clenched so hard I thought I might collapse. Then I licked my fingers. The taste ignited something inside me, a spark that flared into an inferno, consuming everything I had ever known about myself. I leaned in, lips pressing to the torn flesh, and drank. Drank until I was shaking, until I felt him slipping away beneath me, his last breath ghosting against my cheek. The hunger was gone. For the first time in years, I felt whole. That was 2 years ago. I told myself it wouldn't happen again. I lasted 6 months before the hunger came creeping back, curling around my ribs, whispering in my ear. 6 months before I found myself in a motel room with a man who wouldn't be missed. I took my time with him, savoring every bite, every shudder, every silent scream trapped in his throat. I've been careful. I choose the ones no one will look for, the ones already drowning in loneliness, the ones whose disappearances will be nothing more than whispers between cashiers and distant relatives. But last night was different. Last night, I brought him home. I had never done that before. It was reckless, foolish. His blood soaked into my sheets, into my mattress, into the spaces between the floorboards. Even now, I swear I can hear the house drinking it in, holding on to it like a secret. I shouldn't have done it. Not because I regret it, because I don't, because I want more. I sit at the kitchen table staring at the remnants of my feast. Bone fragments, shredded muscle, a sliver of scalp tangled in dark hair. My plate is clean, licked spotless. The hunger is silent, but I know it won't last. It never lasts. I need to be smarter next time, quieter, more careful. The craving will come again, and I have to be ready. I can't afford mistakes. People notice mistakes. I stand, my chair scraping against the tile, and begin the meticulous process of scrubbing away the evidence. The scent of bleach fills the air, burning my nostrils. I scrub until my hands ache, until my fingers crack and bleed. I press my thumb to my lips, tasting the warmth there, and shiver. The hunger stirs. Tonight I will walk the streets again, searching, and when I find the next one, I will take my time. I told him not to try, damn it. He just didn't listen. I told him it was too steep. I told him what the risks were. I reminded him he was still on the tail end of a bad flu, that he might get dizzy, that it wasn't the time to go climbing, but he didn't care. He never had. His safety was always his last priority. His own physical body was the least of his concerns. My long-haired hippie of a husband was too obsessed with finding enlightenment, with pushing beyond the limits of human experience, to remember that he was just that, human and sick. And now look at him, wedged between two jagged rocks at the bottom of Dan's ravine, his body bent the wrong way, his arms too long, his head twisted too far to the side. I can't panic. There's no point. We had talked about this. He's been a DNR since we found out he was sick. He didn't want to be saved. I should be calling the morgue, but that would look suspicious. So instead, I dial 911 and tell them I need paramedics. The dispatcher sounds calm, like this is just another day at Dan's ravine. I almost laugh. Funny, really, that this place was called that. My husband's middle name was Daniel, fitting, like the earth had always planned to take him. Then from below, I hear a shrill, wet, rattling gasp. I freeze. I know that sound. He's not dead. But the sound that follows next, it's not human, it's a growl. A thick, phlegm-filled, wheezing growl, like a lion with a throat full of jelly. And I know that sound too. In my years as a nurse, I'd heard it countless times. The air escaping from a dead body's lungs, a deep, final exhale, a death wheeze. I feel ice slip down my spine, because my husband isn't breathing. That noise, that sound isn't his. The ravine breathes. The paramedics arrive. They come quickly, too quickly. I'm still gripping my phone when I hear the crunch of boots behind me, the crackle of a radio. "Where's the body?" one of them asks. His voice is completely unmoved. I gesture to the edge. They shine their flashlights down. "Jesus," the other mutters. "That's a bad one." The first guy kneels and checks the slope. How long has he been down there? I check my watch. I don't know why I bother. Time doesn't feel real anymore. 15, 20 minutes. Any signs of life? I don't know how to answer that. They don't wait. One of them clicks his radio. "Confirmed fatality. Gonna need a recovery team." I exhale. It's real. He's dead. The world continues turning. Then from the bottom of the ravine, something moves. The paramedics hear it too. One of them lifts his radio again. Wait, hold recovery. I think we've got... The growl rises again. That horrible, rattling death wheeze. The paramedics stop. Their flashlights stay trained on the body. I look down. My husband's body is shifting, rising, not in any way a person should, not pushing himself up. His limbs move first, not the torso, not the head, just the limbs. His arms and legs unfold unnaturally, stiff like they're being pulled by strings, his fingers twisting and curling against the rock. His head lolls uselessly to the side, eyes wide, glassy, unseeing. I don't realize I've grabbed the paramedic's arm until he jerks away from me. "What the hell is that?" he mutters. The other one doesn't answer. He's frozen, his flashlight still aimed at my husband's rising form. Another wheeze. A deep, shuddering exhale. His body snaps upright. My husband, what was my husband, is standing. His neck is still bent at a horrible angle, his mouth slightly open like a marionette waiting for someone to pull the strings. One of the paramedics finally speaks, voice low, shaking. "Jesus Christ, we need backup." Then my husband moves. No hesitation, no struggle, no effort. One moment he's at the bottom of the ravine, the next he's halfway up the slope. The paramedics stumble back. I can't move. This isn't real. But he keeps coming. His body moves in jerks, in spasms. His limbs scrabble against the rocks like an insect climbing a wall. The paramedics start yelling. I hear words like "back up," "not human," and "what the fuck." But all I can do is stare, because I see it now. My husband isn't climbing. He's being pulled. Something below has its hands in him, its fingers wrapped tight around his bones, dragging him up from the depths. The first paramedic finally breaks. He turns and bolts toward the ambulance. The second follows. Too late. My husband reaches the top. I don't recognize him anymore. His jaw hangs slack, his eyes empty, his body still twisted, but his mouth moves now, lips forming words. Not his words, they pour from his throat, overlapping, whispering, laughing, screaming. Some are deep, some are childlike, some sound inhuman. The paramedic makes a strangled noise and stumbles back, shaking his head. My husband, or whatever wears his skin, tilts his head at me, and I hear it. "You should have let him fall deeper." Then he lunges. I don't see what happens next. I don't want to. I turn and run. The paramedic is already ahead of me, but it doesn't matter. I hear the screams behind us, the wet snap of bone, the tearing of muscle, the gurgled chokes of a man being silenced. I run harder. I don't look back. The police report says the paramedics were attacked by a wild animal. That's what the news says too. I don't say anything. I sit at home, my hands still stained with blood, my brain still replaying the moment his body moved on its own. I don't tell them about the voices, or about how the ravine had taken him but refused to let him go. I don't tell them because they already know. The people in town don't ask questions. They don't offer condolences. They just look at me like they knew this would happen, like they'd seen it before. And when I walk past the edge of Dan's ravine, I swear I hear the wind whisper my name, like it's waiting for me too. I should have let him fall deeper. Maybe then he wouldn't have come back. It was a simple job. You bayonet the wounded on the battlefield. That's what they told me when I enlisted, not with guns or bombs, but with a blade and an oath. I was not a fighter. I was a cleaner. My task was to excise any soldiers too damaged to make a full recovery in order to spare Imperial resources and protect its combat reputation. A soldier with half his face gone, whimpering in the mud. Bayonet. A man clawing at his intestines, desperately trying to push them back inside. Bayonet. A boy no older than 16, crying for his mother with his leg pinned under a smoking tank. Bayonet. It had to be done. A burden to the medics, a drain on the war machine, a shameful sight for the Empire. We were the last touch they would ever feel. The army called us the culling men. The infantrymen called us the butchers. We were neither. We were simply men with a duty. At least that's what I told myself. The sky was gray as ash, the air thick with the stink of cordite and seared flesh. The bodies lay where they had fallen, some in pieces, some in tangled piles, some still twitching. I stepped over half of a man, his ribs exposed like a shattered birdcage, his remaining lung fluttering wetly. I bayoneted him through the throat before his agony could twist into words. The war had lasted long enough that I no longer flinched. 20 feet ahead, I saw a soldier dragging himself through the mire, his legs a shredded ruin behind him. He was muttering something under his breath, hands sinking wrist deep in the mud. I recognized the uniform, our side. As I approached, his eyes flicked up to me, bloodshot, wild, soaked in terror. No, please, no. I gripped his shoulder, pressing him down. Shh. My voice was barely more than a breath. He fought me. His fingers clawed at my sleeve, nails breaking against the leather. I can fight, I swear, he cried. Please, don't do this. I have a wife at home. For God's sake, I have a family, just like you. He was too far gone. The rot had already set in. Bayonet through the heart, a single thrust. His whole body arched, mouth frozen mid-scream. Then he slumped back into the filth. A sigh left my lips. I wiped the blade against my coat and turned away. There were more. There were always more. By dusk, we had cleared most of the field. The moans of the dying had faded, leaving only the crackle of distant fires and the cawing of hungry crows. That's when I saw them. Beyond the trench line, past the reach of our bayonets, a group of men stood in the gloom. They did not move. At first, I thought them prisoners left to rot, abandoned by their comrades, but something was off. They were too still. They did not call out for help. They simply watched. I took a step closer, my boots sinking in the bloody mud. Who goes there? No reply. I squinted, my breath hitched. Their faces were hollow. I don't mean thin. I don't mean gaunt. I mean hollow, empty. No eyes, no mouths. Only smooth, pale indentations where their features should have been. Yet I could feel them staring. The air thickened in my throat. A shudder climbed up my spine. Behind me, the other culling men had seen them too. What the hell? One of them, Victor, raised his rifle. Don't, I whispered. He fired. The shot tore through one of the figures. No blood, no sound. The hole sealed itself instantly, like water closing over a stone. Then all at once, they began walking toward us. The moment they moved, the corpses around us began to shift. Bodies we had silenced, men with shredded limbs, shattered skulls, gutted torsos, began to crawl. Mouths tore themselves open where there had been none before. Glistening, ragged holes ringed with teeth. The culling men scattered. Some ran, some screamed, some fired into the mass of writhing flesh, their bullets punching through meat that did not die. Victor was the first to fall. The closest hollowed one reached for him, gripping his skull with both hands. His screams cut short as his face peeled away, not torn, not clawed, sucked. His flesh was dragged inward like a collapsing tent, his eyes vanishing into the concave nothingness of the creature's grip. His body convulsed, writhing against the mud. And then he stood, just like them. His uniform was the same. His body was intact, but his face was gone. I stumbled backward, bile rising in my throat. The crawling dead closed in, jaws opening wide, hands stretching, whispering in tongues I did not know. One of them grabbed my ankle. I kicked its rotting teeth in, sprinted through the fog, vaulted over the twisted heap of a dead horse. I ran. I fled past charred trees and cratered trenches into the ruins of an old bunker. I threw myself against the stone, chest heaving. Outside, the battlefield was silent. The night had swallowed the screams. I gripped my bayonet, hands shaking. Then, drip! A slow, wet noise above me. I lifted my head. The ceiling was moving. No, breathing. A mass of glistening black flesh pulsed against the stone. Veins ran through it like rotting roots, bulging and throbbing. The mortar between the bricks split apart, revealing something wet, glistening, and full of teeth. My breath stalled. The bunker was alive. The walls began to moan. I stumbled backward, my boots sloshing in something thick. Not water, not blood. Something deeper. The sound of flesh tearing echoed through the darkness. A new hole opened in the ceiling, and from it, Victor dropped down. Or what was left of him. His uniform was intact. His body was whole, but his face was an empty cavity, stretched into a silent scream. The hole in the ceiling widened, and in the shifting dark, I saw it had more to feed. I don't remember running. I don't remember escaping. I only remember waking up in the forest, the sky a dead shade of dawn. The battlefield was gone. No bodies, no soldiers, no trenches, just an endless field of churned mud, whispering in the wind. I made it back to camp. I did not tell them what happened, because when I looked at my own reflection in a pool of water, I saw something missing. A piece of me hollowed out. My face was still there, but my eyes were empty, like they were waiting to be filled, like I had been marked for the next culling. And I knew then the war would never end, because the field was still hungry, and it always took back what belonged to it.